You think you woke up this morning. You think you stretched, rubbed your eyes, stood up, and began another day fresh and unbound. But here's the unsettling truth. What you're living right now was already scripted, already rehearsed, already sealed, long before the sun rose. The players were assigned the lines written, and you are acting on a stage you didn't even know you built. You believe you are improvising, making choices, steering the wheel of your life. Yet every decision you'll take today, every person you'll meet, every feeling that rises in your chest was whispered into your subconscious in the final fragile moments before you surrendered to sleep last night. Imagine that when you thought you were simply drifting into unconsciousness, you were actually stepping into the most powerful chamber of creation that exists within the human experience. A chamber where the conscious and the subconscious meet, where the director of your waking story hands over the script to the producer who will assemble the entire set of tomorrow's reality. This isn't poetry. This isn't metaphor. It's the hidden operation of the psyche that mystics, philosophers, and a handful of daring scientists have dared to hint at across history. The ancients encoded it in scripture. Neville Goddard risked his reputation to declare it aloud. And yet somehow, you were never told. What if I told you that the so-called freedom you feel each morning is the most convincing illusion ever crafted? You think free will is exercised in the daylight with conscious choices and rational plans, but your real freedom, your only freedom, lives in the shadows of the night, in that fleeting window when you are still awake but no longer tethered to the noise of the day. In those 60 seconds before sleep closes your eyes, you are king, you are queen, you are alchemist. You wield the scepter of creation. And then just as quickly the crown slips from your fingers and you forget you ever wore it. Think about it. How many mornings have you woken up into a déjà vu of yesterday's troubles? The same financial anxiety, the same relationship strain, the same dull dissatisfaction. Different clothes, different meals, maybe a few novel conversations, but the same emotional weather patterns looping endlessly. You curse the economy, your boss, the government, your unlucky fate. Yet what if those repeating storms were not accidents of circumstance, but seedlings you planted yourself, carried unknowingly into the womb of the subconscious each night? The subconscious doesn't argue with you. It doesn't check the truth of your feelings. It doesn't ask if you meant it when you fell asleep with worry clenched in your chest. It simply takes the feeling, seals it like wax on a royal decree, and spends the night weaving a tapestry to make it real. If you fell asleep anxious, you awaken into a day designed to justify your anxiety. If you fell asleep with a quiet sense of fulfillment, you awaken into a day that conspires to prove you right. Here's the part they fear. You'll discover this process isn't rare, it isn't mystical, it isn't reserved for saints or prophets. It happens every night to every person. But while most of us stumble into sleep, burdened with the residue of unresolved conflict, a few those who understand the code walk deliberately through that portal. They plant the feeling of their desired life, as if it were already real, and then they surrender. And when morning comes, the world bends quietly, invisibly, to match their secret decree. So I ask you, what did you feel in those last 60 seconds before you drifted off yesterday? Did you feel resentment? Did you feel scarcity? Did you replay arguments, scroll through endless images of lives that seemed better than yours, or worry about bills you can't pay? If so, you carried those seeds into the fertile soil of your subconscious. And today, you're harvesting exactly what you sowed. This is why Neville Goddard once said, "Your only true liberty is to choose your last thought before sleep, because after that, you are no longer free. You are bound to the script you've unconsciously written." Sleep is not rest. Sleep is not escape. Sleep is the workshop of the gods, the operating table of the psyche, the invisible factory where your tomorrows are manufactured. 1/3 of your existence is not wasted in darkness. It is the third that programs the 2/3 you call life. And yet society has trained you to treat this sacred third as trivial. We stumble into sleep, drunk on news headlines, sedated by glowing screens, intoxicated by fear and comparison. We have been taught that what matters is what we do when awake, while the most powerful lever remains hidden, disguised, deliberately overlooked. Why? Because a population that does not know how to command its subconscious is a population easy to control. If you go to sleep in fear, you awaken ready to obey. If you go to sleep in lack, you awaken ready to consume. The hidden architects of culture need you unconscious of this power, and so you were never told. But tonight could be different. Tonight you could enter the chamber aware. Tonight you could plant not fear but fulfillment, not despair but gratitude, not scarcity but abundance. And tomorrow would rise to meet you not as a recycling of old chains, but as a script of your own authorship. Yet before we step into the mechanics, before we learn how to wield this nightly miracle, we must confront the central mystery. Why do both religion and science avoid telling you this truth? Why does scripture speak in coded poetry? And why does neuroscience reduce sleep to electrical signals and chemical housekeeping? Why do two seemingly opposed domains, faith and science, conspire, whether knowingly or not, to keep humanity blind to its nightly divinity? That is where our journey begins. Religion, science, and the esoteric all tell fragments of the story. But hidden inside their contradictions lies a map, a blueprint pointing to the single door that opens between your conscious and subconscious, between who you were yesterday and who you will be tomorrow. The question is not whether you are programming reality. You already are. The question is whether you will keep doing it blindly, or whether you will wake up to the truth that your day begins the night before. But that's not the strangest part. You've just heard the claim that your tomorrow is programmed in the fragile minutes before you fall asleep. It sounds outrageous, almost impossible. But pause for a moment and ask yourself, why does this idea feel so alien, so unthinkable, when ancient traditions whispered about it for thousands of years? Why were you never taught that the state of your heart at night is the architect of your morning? The battlefield is drawn across three camps: religion, science, and the esoteric underground. Each has a piece of the puzzle, but each also hides something. Religion cloaks this knowledge in parable and metaphor. In Job it says, "In a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falls upon men, then he opens the ears of men and seals their instruction." Think about that word, seals. A seal is not a suggestion. It is not gentle inspiration. It is binding, permanent, final. Here we see not moral teaching, not vague spirituality, but a technical process, the subconscious receiving and locking in instructions while the conscious is silent. Yet for centuries, sermons have reduced this to poetry, stripped it of its practical implications. Why? Because if you knew that you could re-script your life each night, why would you kneel before intermediaries for permission to change? Science, on the other hand, insists that sleep is mechanical. Neural oscillations, REM cycles, glymphatic cleansing, memory consolidation. These are true, yes, but partial truths. They tell you that sleep clears toxins from the brain, repairs tissue, organizes memories. But ask them, what about the emotional residue you carry into sleep? Why does one person wake refreshed and empowered, while another wakes into despair, even after the same number of hours? Science dodges the question. It avoids the mystery of subjective experience, the inconvenient fact that feelings before sleep shape the felt texture of the next day. Could it be because acknowledging this would mean consciousness is not a mere byproduct of neurons, but the primary architect of lived reality? And then there is the esoteric stream. Ancient Egypt and Greece built dream temples. Pilgrims traveled miles to lie down in stone chambers, where priests guided them into sleep rituals. They believed with utter conviction that dreams were not accidents, but communications, that the portal of sleep was a laboratory of healing, prophecy, and transformation. Was this superstition? Or was it technology disguised as religion, a proto-science of the psyche? The mainstream dismissed it as myth. But what if it was instruction-coded, preserved, and hidden in plain sight? So here we are, standing at the crossroads of three voices. Religion whispers symbols but hides the technique. Science dissects mechanisms but ignores the mystery. The esoteric keeps the keys in closed circles. And you, the ordinary person, are left with fragments, disconnected pieces, while your life plays out on scripts you never knew you wrote. Ask yourself, why did no one in school tell you that your final thought before sleep matters? They taught algebra, history, grammar, but no teacher ever paused to say, guard your last feeling, for it will shape your entire tomorrow. Why not? Was it ignorance, or was it design? Imagine an education system that raised children to consciously see their subconscious with courage, abundance, compassion, and clarity. Imagine societies of individuals who woke each morning carrying states of self-mastery instead of fear. Who would buy the distractions then? Who would need to be ruled? Here's the part they fear. You'll discover a population that falls asleep in fear awakens in submission. A society that falls asleep in lack awakens in consumption. Keep people unconscious of this nightly power, and they will wake each day already programmed to obey, to buy, to fear, to conform. But if even 1% awaken to this truth, the fabric begins to unravel. Because this is not just self-help, fluff, not just wishful thinking. This is a precise mechanism. The minutes before sleep are a doorway, and what you carry through determines what greets you on the other side. So the central question emerges sharper than ever: is your life the product of free choice or the residue of last night's final feeling? Consider this. How many mornings have you awoken into the exact same emotional landscape you carried to bed? How many times did you fall asleep, anxious about money, and wake into another day of bills? How many nights did you fall asleep, heartbroken, and wake into another day, echoing that emptiness? How often do you blame circumstances, not realizing you sealed them yourself? This is the hidden cycle. Thought becomes feeling. Feeling carried into sleep becomes instruction. Instruction becomes tomorrow's circumstance. Circumstance reinforces thought. Around and around you go, thinking fate conspires against you, when in truth you are conspiring against yourself unconsciously. Now ask yourself honestly, what did you carry into sleep last night? Did you close your eyes with gratitude or with resentment? Did you let go, or did you cling to every fear? What about the night before that, or the night before that? If you feel a shiver in your chest, it's because you're beginning to see the pattern. And this is where the ancients left us breadcrumbs. The Stoics practiced evening reflection, a nightly examine of the soul. They believed the last thought before sleep should be a purified one, because tomorrow was not guaranteed, and the state of mind carried into sleep would echo into whatever came next. Buddhists taught about cetana, the intentional seed that determines the karmic unfolding. In both traditions, the final impression mattered more than any ritual of the day. It was the seed of continuity, the thread between this day and the next. We've been taught to obsess over our mornings, morning routines, morning affirmations, morning habits. But what if the real secret is not how you start your day, but how you end it? What if the key to tomorrow's sunrise lies not in your alarm clock rituals, but in the invisible minute before sleep swallows you whole? Religion, science, and the esoteric, they all circle this truth. Religion encodes it in scripture. Science skirts around it with data on REM states. Esotericism preserves it in rituals. But put them together, and the picture becomes undeniable. Tonight, when you lie down, you will enter the same portal as always. The difference is whether you enter blind or awake. Blind, you'll carry the weight of the day, and tomorrow will mirror it back. Awake, you can plant a seed so precise, so deliberate, that tomorrow cannot help but unfold differently. But before we uncover exactly how to use this portal, we need to dig deeper into the philosophical and ancient foundations. Because once you see that this principle has been hidden in plain sight, across cultures, across centuries, you'll never dismiss it as mere imagination again. And that's where we're going next. Across the span of civilizations, from the desert temples of Egypt to the stone amphitheaters of Greece, from the scrolls of Hermetic philosophers to the meditations of Buddhist monks, one truth whispers beneath 1,000 veils your inner. State is the author of your outer world, and nowhere is this truth more dramatically evident than in the moment before sleep. The Hermetic texts say, "As above, so below, as within, so without." Most people treat these words as vague spirituality, but what if they were operating instructions? If your inner state is the seed, then the external day is simply the sprout. Sleep is the soil where this law is enacted. What you feel just before your eyes close is the vibration you transmit to the subconscious, and by correspondence, that vibration writes itself into tomorrow's reality. The Gnostics took this further. For them, ignorance agnosis was the prison of the human spirit. Freedom came not from external rituals, but from gnosis, direct inner knowing. Imagine their shock if they saw us today, billions falling asleep every night, without awareness, carrying chains of fear into the womb of creation. The Gnostics would say, we are prisoners who lock our own cell doors each night, then wonder why we wake in cages. Gnosis is the key awareness of the portal, awareness of the seed you plant, awareness that your feeling is not trivial, but the architect of experience. The Stoics, though often seen as rational and austere, practiced a nightly ritual called the examen. Before bed, they reviewed the day not with guilt, but with clarity. They asked, what did I do well? Where did I fall short? What shall I release? They understood something. Modern psychology is only beginning to rediscover that the last state of consciousness before sleep continues its momentum into the play-sleep. Night. For Marcus Aurelius, the final thought was a cleansing, a way to close the day with integrity. For Epictetus, it was a discipline, a way of guarding the gates of the mind before unconsciousness claimed it. They knew that discipline at night was more powerful than discipline in the morning. Buddhism teaches cetana, the intention that seeds karma. Intention is not mere thought, it is the direction of feeling. Monks train to maintain clarity, even as sleep approaches, aware that the final moment before unconsciousness is the bridge between one stream of consciousness and the next. They speak of the bhavanga, the life continuum mind that flows like an undercurrent beneath waking and sleeping. In those last fragile breaths before sleep, intention sets the tone for that continuum. What you plant becomes the momentum of your tomorrow. And then there is Jung, standing at the threshold of modern psychology and ancient myth. Jung believed that dreams were compensatory, that the unconscious presents symbols to balance the rigidities of the conscious mind. But beyond this, he knew the psyche had a creative function. The unconscious was not a passive storehouse, it was a workshop, a generator, a myth-making engine. He called it the collective unconscious, the place where symbols live, where archetypes breathe, where the soul writes its scripts. For Jung, the symbols in dreams were not random, they were messages, instructions, reflections of the feeling states we carried inward. He wrote, "The dream is a little hidden door in the innermost and most secret recesses of the soul." Do you see the resonance? Hidden door, secret recess, instruction sealed. Across traditions, the language converges. Think of the visual metaphors that repeat across cultures. The eye symbol of perception and awareness. In Egypt, the eye of Horus guarded the dreamer, symbolizing wholeness and vision beyond waking sight. the serpent-coiled energy that transforms when awakened, slithering between the conscious and subconscious, like kundalini at the base of the spine. The mirror present in countless myths, reminding us that the world is not external, but reflective, echoing the state carried within. The code, the hidden instruction, disguised as scripture, whispered as mantra, preserved in mystery schools. The flame, eternal consciousness, the light that never extinguishes even when eyes close. Why do these symbols repeat? Because they are teaching tools, attempts to gesture at the same hidden reality. The portal of sleep is not absence, it is creation. But here's the paradox. Knowing is not enough. Philosophy without embodiment is empty. The Stoic could recite virtue, but if he went to bed seething with resentment, his subconscious would still obey resentment. The Buddhist could memorize sutras, but if he fell asleep with craving, craving would still dictate tomorrow. The Hermetic philosopher could debate correspondence, but if he lay restless with fear, fear would still be sealed as law. This is why traditions emphasized practice, not just belief. The Stoic practiced nightly reflection. The Buddhist practiced mindful breathing into sleep. The Gnostic practiced interior awareness, reminding themselves that they were more than the material illusion. Each path pointed to the same operational truth: what you take into sleep becomes what you awaken into. And now, let's bring this closer to your own life. How many times have you carried arguments, regrets, or endless scrolling into the bed with you? You didn't just waste time. You delivered those states as instructions. You thought sleep was escape, but sleep is execution. Your subconscious, the most faithful servant in existence, took your fear and said, "Yes, Master, tomorrow I will find ways to prove this fear correct." And it did. But here is the mystery within the mystery. If you can deliver fear, you can also deliver freedom. If you can deliver scarcity, you can also deliver abundance. The subconscious does not discriminate, it accepts the package you hand it. The only question is whether you hand it chaos by default or order by design. So, when the Bible speaks of Jacob laying his head on a stone and seeing a ladder to heaven, is it not telling us that sleep is the place where ladders are found? When Song of Songs whispers of holding the beloved in the chamber of conception, is it not instructing us to carry the feeling of desire fulfilled into the womb of the subconscious? These are not random verses, they are coded manuals. And yet society laughs it off as superstition. Science dismisses it as unmeasurable. Religion rebrands it as metaphor. But the ancients left these breadcrumbs everywhere, waiting for eyes willing to see. Here's the part they fear. You'll discover these traditions weren't offering myths. They were offering a user's manual for consciousness. They told us again and again that the final feeling before sleep is the lever of creation. But philosophy only matters once. It enters the body. You can study Hermetic principles, Gnostic myths, Stoic meditations, Buddhist sutras, Jungian psychology, but until you practice it in the moment, your eyes close, it remains abstract. And this is where we move from symbols to mechanism. Because philosophy explains the why, but mechanism explains the how. And the how is where the secret becomes undeniable. The ancients called it the sacred union of the conscious and the subconscious. Neville called it the sleep-like state. Scientists call it the hypnagogic window. Different words for the same door. The question is, what exactly happens in that door? Why does the subconscious seal instructions so faithfully in those final moments? And why is feeling not thought the language it obeys? That is where we go next. Now that you've seen the fingerprints of this truth in ancient philosophy, the next step is to understand how it actually works. Not as metaphor, not as poetry, but as mechanism. Because what happens in the final minutes before sleep is not mystical fog. It is a precise shift in the architecture of consciousness, one that neuroscience can measure, mystics can harness, and you can experience tonight. When you are fully awake, your brain hums mostly in beta waves between 13 and 30 Hz. This is the state of problem-solving alertness and vigilance, but as you prepare for sleep, your rhythm slows. You pass through alpha 812 Hz, a relaxed but aware state, like when you're daydreaming. And then just before unconsciousness, you slip into theta 48 Hz. This is the hypnagogic window, the liminal threshold between waking and sleeping. Here the barriers dissolve. Here the conscious mind relaxes its grip, and the subconscious opens like fertile soil. Neville called this the sleep-like state. Modern scientists call it hypnagogia. Ancient mystics called it the gateway. Different languages for the same doorway. It is here, in this fragile interval, that the subconscious becomes most permeable, most ready to receive impressions. And the impressions it receives in this state do not fade like random thoughts. They are sealed. They become the blueprint for the subconscious to act upon throughout the night. Why sealed? Think of wax poured over a scroll and pressed with a ring. The image remains unchangeable until broken. The Bible used the language of seals for a reason. When Job says God seals their instruction in the night, it is not metaphor, it is description. The subconscious accepts the impression as law. Once sealed, it does not negotiate, it does not doubt, it simply obeys. But here is where most people make a critical mistake. They believe words or thoughts are enough. They repeat affirmations mechanically whispering, "I am rich, I am loved, I am successful," without realizing that the subconscious does not listen to syllables. The subconscious listens to feeling. Why? Because feeling is the oldest language of consciousness. Before you had words, before you had symbols, you had sensation. The fetus does not think in logic, it feels. The infant does not conceptualize, it feels. Long before the neocortex evolved, the organism navigated reality through felt states of safety, fear, hunger, satisfaction. Feeling is primordial. It cuts beneath the chatter of the rational mind. This is why Neville insisted capture the feeling of the wish fulfilled, not the thought, not the visualization, but the felt state, because to the subconscious feeling equals reality. Think about a nightmare. You wake sweating, heart racing, convinced it was real. Why? Because your subconscious does not distinguish between external events and internally generated feelings. If you feel it, it is real to the subconscious. And what is real to the subconscious is expressed in the waking world. So here's the mechanism: you lie down. Your brain slows to theta. The door opens. You capture a feeling, not hope, not desire, but the sensation of already being what you wish. You slide into sleep while holding this feeling. The subconscious, like a 3D printer, takes the blueprint and spends the night weaving circumstances, perceptions, and behaviors to align your waking world with that feeling. Consider modern neuroscience. Researchers speak of the brain as a prediction machine. At every moment, your brain generates models of reality, then filters perception to confirm those models. If you feel threatened, the brain highlights threats. If you feel safe, the brain highlights opportunities. The pre-sleep feeling installs the model. The brain then biases perception all day to fulfill that model. What you call coincidence, what you call synchronicity, is often just the brain carrying out the program it sealed at night. Quantum physics brushes against this truth. The observer effect suggests that reality exists as probability until observed. Neville would say the observation happens primarily in the subconscious during sleep. The conscious eye merely witnesses what the subconscious has already chosen. The collapse of possibility into reality is not random. It is instructed by the last feeling carried into the subconscious portal. Do you see the elegance of this design? 8 hours of sleep for 16 hours of execution. 1 part programming, 2 parts living. Just as a computer spends minutes compiling code before hours of running the program, your mind compiles tomorrow in the final moments before unconsciousness. But here lies the hidden danger. If you fall asleep anxious, the subconscious seals anxiety. If you fall asleep bitter, it seals bitterness. If you fall asleep distracted by meaningless scrolling, it seals distraction. The subconscious does not judge, does not filter, does not protect. It accepts whatever you hand it. This is why the modern world is so dangerous. Endless screens, violent news, the flood of comparison from social media, all of it designed to be the last thing you see, the last thing you feel before you close your eyes. Do you think that is an accident, or is it deliberate design? Here's the part. They fear you'll discover the simplest way to enslave a population is to control what they feel before sleep. Control the last feeling, and you control the entire day that follows. But the mechanism is not only a warning, it is also a promise, because the very fact that the subconscious obeys so faithfully means you can redirect it, you can give it a new instruction. And you don't need rituals, gurus, or expensive systems. You need only to master the final minute. How would you feel if it were already true? Not how would you get there, not do you deserve it, not is it possible, only this: how would you feel if it were already so? Maybe it is peace, maybe it is relief, maybe it is quiet joy. Whatever that feeling is, hold it gently, naturally, without force, and then as you cross the threshold into sleep, carry it with you. That is all. And tomorrow, the world will begin to bend in ways you cannot anticipate, not because you forced it, but because you instructed it. This is the mechanism that underlies dream incubation in ancient temples. Stoic nightly reflections, Buddhist mindful sleep, and Neville's feeling is the secret. It is not superstition, it is not metaphor, it is precise. But now comes the question that matters most. How do you actually practice it? What rituals, what steps, what nightly protocols can anchor this truth in your life? Because knowing the mechanism is not enough. Without practice, it becomes just another fascinating idea left to wither in memory. With practice, it becomes transformation. And that's where we go next, the lab protocols, the nightly rituals that can turn knowledge into power. Knowledge without practice is like a seed kept in a jar, intact, but never alive. The ancients didn't preserve these truths for idle contemplation. They preserved them because they are meant to be lived, to be enacted each night when you cross the threshold of sleep. The question is not whether the subconscious will receive instructions tonight. It will. The only question is whether you deliver those instructions unconsciously out of habit and fear, or consciously as a deliberate author of your tomorrow. So let's walk into the laboratory. Here are the protocols, simple, practical, but profound, designed not to add complexity, but to strip away distraction until only the essential remains. Step 1: Purge. Before you lie down, take 3 minutes, no more, no less, to clear the residue of the day. Neuroscience calls this emotional dumping. The Stoics called it the examen. Write a single sentence in a notebook. Today I release, and finish it honestly. Release the argument, release the worry, release the unfinished tasks. It doesn't matter if the problem remains unsolved. The act of naming and letting it go signals to the psyche, this is not the seed I choose to plant. Without this purge, your subconscious will take the sediment of the day and build tomorrow with it. With it, you create space for something new. Step 2: Switch. Your body is the gatekeeper. If the body is tense, the subconscious will mirror tension. So shift your physiology. For 90 seconds, breathe with a longer exhale than inhale. Inhale for 4 counts, exhale for 6. This calms the vagus nerve, lowers heart rate, and signals safety. Remember, feeling is the language of the subconscious. Safety is fertile soil. Anxiety is poison. You must switch states before you seal instructions. Step 3. Select. Now comes the question. Ask yourself quietly, how would I feel if what I desire were already true? Not how would I get it, not do I deserve it, not is it possible. Only this, how would I feel? Sit with the answer. Maybe it is relief, the unclenching of the chest when debt is gone. Maybe it is love, the quiet warmth of companionship. Maybe it is abundance, not ecstasy, but the simple ease of not needing to count every coin. Notice this, the genuine end state is rarely euphoria, it is normalcy. When something is truly yours, it feels ordinary. This is the paradox. Success doesn't feel like fireworks, it feels like home. Step 4. Stabilize. Here the mind will try to sabotage. Logic will whisper, but it isn't true. Look at your bank account. Look at your loneliness. Look at the facts. Do not fight the thoughts. Fighting feeds them. Instead, stabilize the feeling by looping a simple inner scene that confirms it. Neville called this the imaginal act. Choose a scene no longer than 10 seconds. Perhaps it is shaking a friend's hand in congratulations. Perhaps it is lying in bed with a partner's arm around you. Perhaps it is checking your phone and seeing a paid in full message. Keep it short. Keep it vivid. And most importantly, keep it calm. You are not chasing, you are confirming. Loop the scene 3 times, then let it fade into the feeling alone. Step 5. Surrender. Now comes the hardest part for the modern mind. Do nothing. Glide into sleep, carrying the feeling, not forcing it, not gripping it, like holding a feather on your palm, gentle, steady, without strain. If you try to force, you wake yourself. If you chase, you signal lack. But if you allow, you deliver the impression cleanly into the womb of the subconscious. You surrender not into defeat, but into trust. This entire ritual need not take more than 10 minutes. 3 minutes to purge. 90 seconds to switch. A few minutes to select and stabilize. Then surrender. That's it. And yet, in its simplicity lies its power. Complexity is often an excuse. Guru systems, endless courses, they all thrive on making this seem difficult. But the truth is insulting in its simplicity. Your tomorrow is decided by what you feel in the minute before sleep. Nothing more, nothing less. Now, let's add refinements for the serious practitioner. Morning coherence. The first 2 minutes after waking are the mirror of the last 2 minutes before sleep. As soon as you open your eyes before reaching for your phone, recall the feeling you carried into sleep. Breathe it once more. This locks the program like pressing save on a file you compiled overnight. Troubleshooting anxiety. Some nights fear grips tightly. If you cannot generate the feeling of the wish fulfilled, start smaller. Start with subtractive practice. Instead of adding abundance, release scarcity. Instead of forcing love, release loneliness. The feeling of relief, the absence of the problem, can be just as fertile as seed. Relief is often easier to access than triumph. Weekly reset. Once a week, dedicate a night not to a specific goal, but to identity. Ask, who am I when I live, as if it is already done. Plant that identity as the seed. Not wealth itself, but being the kind of person for whom wealth is natural. Not love itself, but being the kind of person for whom love is inevitable. Identity-level feelings are deeper roots. Common disruptions. If you wake in the middle of the night, do not panic. The subconscious seals instructions at the first descent into deep sleep. Waking does not erase it. Simply recall the feeling gently and surrender again. Now pause and imagine the consequences. What if you practice this for 7 nights? Just 7. What would reorganize itself without your conscious effort? You would notice conversations tilting differently, opportunities appearing that were invisible before. your own reactions softening where they once tightened. Not miracles falling from the sky, but subtle alignments that accumulate until the improbable becomes inevitable. This is the revolution Neville hinted at, not the drama of instant manifestations, but the quiet compounding of nightly impressions. Night after night, seed after seed, your life bends. Slowly at first, then suddenly. But remember, every laboratory has dangers. If used carelessly, the same mechanism that can free you can also enslave you. Because the subconscious accepts instructions blindly, it can just as easily reinforce your prison as it can open your freedom. So before you step further, you must know the traps, the misconceptions, the mistakes, the silent poisons that can undo your work before it even begins. And that's where we go next. Every tool of power carries its own shadow. Fire warms the home, but fire also burns it to the ground. Electricity lights your path, but a surge can destroy everything plugged into it. The subconscious is no different. The very force that can rescript your life with elegance can also, if misunderstood, bind you to deeper chains. So before you walk further into this laboratory of the night, you must know the warnings. The first trap is affirmation without feeling. You can stand in front of a mirror repeating, "I am wealthy, I am loved, I am free," until your throat is dry. But if deep inside you feel lack, abandonment, and bondage, the subconscious will ignore the words and obey the feeling. Remember, this eternal law, thoughts decorate but feelings instruct. You can say the word fire 1,000 times, but only the sensation of heat will convince your body that flames are near. In the same way, the subconscious discerns reality not through syllables but through resonance. The second trap is forcing euphoria. Many people misunderstand the wish fulfilled as a state of hyper-excitement. They try to pump themselves into ecstasy, jumping with imagined joy, screaming their affirmations. But consider, does a millionaire feel shock when looking at their account? Does a beloved spouse gasp daily in amazement that someone loves them? No. The true end state is not hysteria, it is calm possession. The real signature of fulfillment is naturalness. When something is yours, it feels ordinary. The subconscious understands ordinary far better than it understands hype. The third trap is obsession with means instead of ends. The conscious mind craves control, so it latches onto the how. If I fall asleep feeling wealthy, should I imagine winning the lottery? Should I picture my boss promoting me? Should I visualize an inheritance? But the subconscious is not a bureaucrat that needs instructions for every step. It is the architect that knows infinite paths. Your job is to deliver the end tone, "I am already in possession." Its job is to orchestrate the means. The moment you dictate the exact path, you shrink infinite potential to one narrow corridor, and often you strangle the very manifestation that was already on its way. The fourth trap is nighttime contamination. In our modern world, distraction is not random, it is engineered. Social media scrolls, violent news headlines, binge streaming shows are designed to grab your last minutes before bed. Why? Because what you feel then is what you program. If your final emotion is envy from comparing lives online, envy becomes the seed. If your final emotion is fear from watching violence, fear becomes the seed. If your final emotion is agitation, from endless scrolling agitation becomes the seed. The subconscious is not selective. It does not ask whether the content was real or fictional. It only obeys the felt state. Entering sleep after such contamination is like walking into surgery with dirty hands. You infect the entire operation. The fifth trap is impatience. Seeds do not sprout overnight. You do not plant a tree on Monday and complain on Tuesday that no fruit has grown. Yet many people practice the sleep ritual once or twice, then declare it doesn't work. They wake up looking for immediate evidence, and when they don't find it, they dig up the seed in frustration. What they don't realize is that the manifestation begins invisibly. It starts as shifts in perception, coincidences, opportunities, subtle alignments. Like roots growing underground before the stalk breaks the soil, the subconscious works in darkness before evidence appears in daylight. Impatience uproots the process. Patience nourishes it. The sixth trap is more subtle and more dangerous: ethical blindness. The subconscious does not filter morality. If you plant seeds of manipulation, vengeance, or cruelty, it will obey. But beware, consciousness is not only personal, it is collective. What you impress upon the subconscious ripples into the field of others, and the psyche compensates. This is why tradition spoke of karma, or justice, not as punishment from outside, but as correction from within. If you impress feelings that fracture your integrity, the psyche itself will counterbalance, often in ways that feel like sabotage. Power without alignment corrodes. Power with alignment expands. There is another misconception worth shattering: that this practice is a magical guarantee of specific external results. Understand this: the subconscious does not print reality like a vending machine. It tunes your perception, biases your attention, adjusts your behavior, and orchestrates coincidences in ways that fulfill the feeling you have impressed. This does not mean every fantasy manifests instantly. It means that your lived reality will bend toward coherence with your inner tone. Sometimes the path is indirect. Sometimes it prunes away what no longer matches. Sometimes it destroys before it builds. The law is exact, but the process is rarely linear. So how do you avoid these traps? By remembering the principle that underlies them all: simplicity. Do not complicate, do not force, do not contaminate, do not hurry, do not betray your own integrity. Capture the feeling, carry it into sleep. Trust the process. That is all. But here's the part that may disturb you most. Every night you are already using this power. Every night you are already handing the subconscious a seed. If you fall asleep in resentment, you plant resentment. If you fall asleep in despair, you plant despair. If you fall asleep numb, you plant emptiness. You cannot escape the law. The only choice is whether you use it consciously or unconsciously. Now imagine a world where billions fall asleep each night in fear, inadequacy, distraction. Imagine what kind of reality such a species awakens into. Look around. Does it make sense now? The cycles of conflict, poverty, consumption, they are not just political or economic. They are programmed nightly in bedrooms across the globe. And the architects of distraction knowingly or not ensure it continues. But now imagine the opposite. Imagine even a fraction of people reclaiming their nightly authorship, falling asleep deliberately with states of abundance, compassion, and clarity. Imagine what kind of collective dawn would follow. The revolution would not begin in parliaments or protests. It would begin in bedrooms, in silence, in the final minute before sleep. And this leads us to the climactic truth. The knowledge is here, the rituals are here, the traps are revealed. The only question left is, will you choose? Tonight, not tomorrow, not someday, but tonight, will you claim the crown in the final 60 seconds, or will you hand it away yet again? Because once you feel the end, what ends is the old you. But the greatest revelation still waits: the ultimate closing of this journey. Not warning, not caution, but empowerment. A bold reminder of what it means to be human and the unforgettable choice you carry each night. And that's where we go next. 1/3 of your life is given to sleep, not as an accident of biology, but as design. 8 hours out of every 24 are the sacred chamber where tomorrow is written. 2/3 of your existence simply executes what was sealed in that hidden third. And now you know the final minute before you surrender to unconsciousness is the throne from which you govern the empire of your life. Think of the weight of this truth, all the choices you believe you make in daylight, all the improvisations you think are spontaneous, are shadows of the decree you signed last night. You wake each morning convinced of freedom, but in reality you are reciting lines written in a script that you yourself authored unconsciously. That's why history feels repetitive, why your days echo each other, why progress feels elusive. You are recycling instructions night after night, unaware that you are both the jailer and the prisoner. But awareness changes everything. Awareness is the key that opens the locked door. When you know that the subconscious is the faithful servant, when you know that the final feeling is the seal, when you know that the last 60 seconds are the lever, you can no longer pretend you are powerless. Yes, society benefits from your ignorance. Yes, distraction machines are designed to poison your portal. Yes, you were never taught this in school, but ignorance is no longer an excuse. Now you know. And here's the paradox. Freedom is not earned in struggle, but chosen in stillness. You don't need years of meditation, endless affirmations, or gurus to sell you formulas. You need courage. The courage to feel the end before it appears. The courage to surrender into sleep, carrying not fear but fulfillment. The courage to live as if you already are who you seek to become. That is the great reversal, the law of assumption, the secret encoded in scripture, philosophy, and psychology alike. Consider what this means. Each night you die to the day. Each night you are given a blank womb. And each night you choose unconsciously whether to be reborn in scarcity, or in abundance in resentment, or in peace, in despair, or in possibility. This is resurrection on a daily scale. Death, conception, birth, repeating endlessly one cycle every 24 hours. How many cycles will you waste? How many rebirths will you squander by planting the same seed of fear? Or will tonight be the night you begin again? Do not underestimate the simplicity of the practice. Complexity is the great deception. The mind wants to complicate because complexity postpones action. Maybe I need another book. Maybe I need the right meditation app. Maybe I need proof first. No, you already hold the power. You always have. All that matters is this: what will you feel in the last breath before your eyes close? That is the question that shapes every sunrise. So let me ask you directly, when you lie down tonight, will you carry the chaos of the day? Will you scroll until your mind is full of other people's lives? Will you rehearse arguments that ended hours ago? Will you cradle fear, lack envy, and hand them as gifts to your subconscious? Or will you choose? Will you capture the quiet relief of debts, cleared the ordinary warmth of being loved, the natural ease of abundance? Will you dare to feel fulfilled before evidence appears? Because here is the truth: reality does not wait for proof. Reality bends to feeling. The subconscious does not need permission slips from circumstance. It only needs instruction, and instruction is feeling. The revolution is small, invisible, silent. No protests, no slogans, no grand declarations. Just a single human being lying in bed, closing their eyes and choosing a different final feeling. One person does this, then another, then another. And slowly the collective dream begins to shift. Entire cultures are nothing more than billions of subconscious scripts overlapping. Change the seed and the forest changes. Do not wait for the world to awaken. Begin with yourself. Tonight, when you close your eyes, do it as if you are sealing a decree. Do it as if you are a sovereign signing tomorrow into existence. Hold the feeling of the wish fulfilled, not as desire, not as hope, but as reality. Deliver it gently, reverently into the chamber of sleep, and then surrender, knowing the subconscious, faithful and tireless, will spend the night weaving your tomorrow. The choice is yours: to sleep blindly as you always have, or to sleep deliberately as the ancients once taught. To carry the same chains into another dawn, or to break them in silence before the world ever sees. So tonight, when the light fades and your eyelids grow heavy, remember this: you are not drifting into unconsciousness. You are entering the throne room. You are sealing the script. You are writing tomorrow. Close your eyes like a king sealing a decree, and let the night carry your signature into the day.